So the last time I was in London is actually the most amazing story, like a crazy story, like multiple stories actually. So let me share that with you. So first of all, it actually started with I had completed the development of a play called Broke Wide Open for 4 years. I was in the 4th year of developing this play, and I had developed it in the streets all around New York City, from New York City actually to Asbury Park and everywhere in between. I literally developed it out on the streets, in parks, in abandoned storefronts, things like that. I started to go to poetry clubs. I was just developing the script. I was writing every single day for years. And I was lucky enough to work with this great director, a guy named Stephen Bishop Seeley, who was reading my changes every time I made them. And I'm talking about like a play that originally was like 4 hours long. And eventually it got down to 2.5 hours. So it was like a play, you know, like a real full-length play. Even though it was a solo play, it was a play. It was not a one-man show or something like that. It was a play. And it actually became a musical. Well, some people called it a play with music. I mean, it wasn't a conventional musical, but it was high energy, relentless storytelling for 2.5 hours. So anyway, I got to the 4th year, and I was fortunate enough to get accepted to a pretty big festival in London called the Camden Fringe Festival. So I was going to perform for 2 weeks there. So the first part of the story is that I did a Kickstarter campaign before Kickstarters and GoFundMes and stuff like that were a thing. Like nobody was really doing that kind of stuff at that time. You know, now people do it like, you know, I want to take my daughter to Jamaica, please give me money. Like at the time, it was really for either people who were doing inventions or for arts projects. So I was trying to get myself to London, and because the thing is, I got accepted to the festival, but they didn't pay you to get there, and they didn't pay you to stay there. So I had to get a hotel, and I had to get my flight. And I really didn't have enough money to do it on my own at that time. I was dedicating my entire life to this play, and I was living like I was 15 years old, like just making barely enough money to pay my rent and to eat consistently, and that was it. Like, people who know me know I sacrificed everything for this play. So anyway, I run this Kickstarter campaign, and I just, you know, I work it every single day. You know, I'm talking about it on social media, I'm putting up videos, I'm going out in the streets, I'm telling everybody about it. And the night before it was going to end, and if you know about Kickstarter, you make a goal. Let's say I have to raise $5,000. If you raise $4,999, you don't get anything. Like, you must reach your goal, period. So I was approximately $1,800 short. Like, I had raised, I think, $3,200 approximately. Let's say it was 9:30 at night, and it was going to end at midnight that night. And so I just thought, I'm not, you know, I'm going to have to figure it out. Like, I don't know if I'm going to take a boat or what I'm going to do. I'm going to get there, but, you know, I wasn't hopeful that my Kickstarter was going to be successful. And literally, right before midnight, I get a notification that it was a success. Like, congratulations, your Kickstarter has been a success. Contact people, congratulate them, get ready to give out the gifts that you offered. And I'm like, how did this happen? And it was one guy who invested the rest of the money, a man named Jack Sharkey, who for a long time was like the biggest supporter of independent theater in New York City. Like, he literally was the reason that a lot of independent theater lived for a really long time, and I was fortunate enough to get this man's support at that time. And I cried. I cried like a baby when it happened, and I was so grateful. And so that's the first part of the story that was amazing. So then I booked my flight, I booked my hotel, and I'm really excited. I'm getting ready to go to London, which was not the first time I had been there. I had been to London before, but this was the first time I was going for theater. I had been there for music before when I was in the music business, but this was an opportunity to share my play internationally for the first time. So I get on the plane, I'm all excited to go overseas. I get to Heathrow Airport. I think I got in at like, I think it was about 11 o'clock, well, it was 10:30 London time. And I get on the train to get to Camden, which is where I was staying. And it's kind of a long train ride to get there. And these two people are in the train, in the car with me, and they see me looking up at the map. And so this guy says to me, "You need any help?" And I was like, yeah, I'm trying to figure out which one of these stops is closest to the hotel that I'm going to. And by the way, I'm looking like tourist. You know, I got my rolling bag and, you know, you could tell I'm not from here. You know, I'm probably wearing my Subway t-shirts like I always did. And so this guy starts to, you know, he asked me for the address to the hotel and he knows where it is. And he starts to give me some, you know, information and some suggestions. And the woman sitting next to him starts to disagree with him. And he's like, he should definitely get off at that stop. And she's like, oh no, you should definitely not get off there. You need to get off at the next stop. And he's like, no, do not get off at that stop. Definitely. Like, you can't get off there. I don't even think that stop is open right now. And they were both very concerned. And then they're both telling me, just be really careful. Like, just, you know, watch yourself. And they're arguing over which stop to get off of. So anyway, eventually they agreed that I should get off at the first stop. And I was like, why, you know, like, what's going on? Why are you so concerned? You know, what are you concerned about? And neither of them would be specific. They just said, just be careful. So they both got off before me. And I rode for about another 25 minutes. And I get out at the station they told me to get out at. And, you know, go through the platform. I remember I bought myself a Cadbury, I think, chocolate bar, because I remember the last time I was in London, I really liked those. And I walk up the steps. I emerge on the street. It's 11 o'clock at night, and the first thing I see is a woman get her face smashed with a bottle. Literally. Some guy walked over and just smashes a bottle on her face. This woman's laying on the ground and people are screaming, and I'm looking around and there's riots everywhere. And I'm seeing like windows being smashed in storefronts. I'm seeing cars being, you know, on fire, you know, being blown up, and I'm just seeing people running everywhere. All over the place. And I am seeing cops with like protective gear and, you know, those protective shields, keeping people away from them and like running away from the crowd. And I'm like, what the hell, like, you know, what is going on? It's just crazy, you know? And so it's like, welcome to London. And so I walked over to a cop and I was like, yo, what's happening? He's like, there's riots, you know? And I was like, well, how do I get to my hotel? And I showed him where the hotel was. He goes, you can't go there. That place is shut down. That's like the middle of where all of this is happening. And I'm like, I have to get there. And he runs away. And so I walk over to another cop, a woman, and I ask her, you know, how do I get to this hotel? She's like, you definitely cannot go there. And then she runs away. And I'm like, what am I going to do? You know, I don't have any contact information for people in Camden. I don't know anybody there. I don't know what to do at this point. You know, like if I can't get to my hotel, I'm just going to be in the street. And so all of a sudden this guy comes up to me and he's like, yo, I heard you talking to the cop. I can help you get there. Like, follow me. And he just runs off. He's like, come on. And I'm like, oh, excuse me. Sorry, dropped my audio thing. I'm getting so excited. So anyway, I'm seeing this guy running away. He's like, come on, let's go. And I'm thinking, okay, either this guy's going to rob me or kill me or help me. Like, I got to make a decision. I got to take a leap of faith, I guess, because this is probably the only way that I'm going to get to my hotel. So he goes, come on, I know how to get you there. Seriously, let's go. So I take my bags, you know, again, looking like tourist guy, robbed me, you know. I got all my stuff, my big, gigantic backpack. And so I follow him. And so he takes me onto a side street, and we start going through people's backyards. Now, these are like row houses, kind of like, you know, like a Brooklyn street, like brownstone kind of places, and people have backyards. We are literally climbing over fences, running through people's backyards, climbing over another fence. I'm throwing my bag over, I'm throwing my backpack over, climbing the fence, jumping down, and we're running and running. And we're doing this for probably, I guess, a mile or something like that, because I was about a mile away from my hotel, because I had been told not to get off at the other station, which was actually correct. And we're just like, you know, then every once in a while we try to get back out on the street and cops are stopping us like, no. So we get back onto the other street, start going over more backyards, and we're like running through people's homes, you know, outside their homes, not inside, but we're going through their backyards. So, you know, it's like total insanity, and the riots are crazy, just crazy. And I don't even know what's happening or what's going on, but evidently this was the first night of these riots. So anyway, we get all the way down. The guy takes me. We finally find an alleyway where we are allowed to get out on the street. And he says to me, "That's your hotel over there. Good luck. Just get in there and be safe." And he just takes off, and he leaves. And I'm like, you know, it's like that cliche. I didn't even get to say thank you. I mean, he was gone. And so I ran over to the hotel, and I'm banging on the door. The doors are locked, and I see two people at the desk, at the front desk. And I'm like, yo, let me in. And they're like, no, we're closed. And I'm like, yo, And I'm saying, I have a reservation, you know, like, let me in, this is crazy. And they're like, no. And so they were one of those police barricades, you know, like those horses. And so I pulled the big wooden piece that, you know, keeps it together, and I'm ready to break the window to get into this hotel. And so the guy behind the desk sees that I'm gonna do this. He's like, no, 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 stop. So he opens the door, he lets me in. He checks me in, and he's like, look, we're closed, obviously. And I said, I have a reservation. I'm here from New York City. So he shows me my room. I go upstairs, I just throw my stuff down, and I literally laid down on the floor, scared to death. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna die. Like, it was crazy. I've never been involved in something like that, never been around anything like that. It was just crazy, crazy. So I fall asleep on the floor. I wake up the next morning, and I contact the artistic director from the theater. And I said, can I go look at the theater? You know, not knowing what the streets are going to be like at this point. And she said, sure. She goes, it's open. You know, there's somebody there, just go see the space. And so I walked outside, you know, with a little bit of trepidation, like I'm, you know, a little nervous about what it's going to be like. And it was totally calm, like there was nothing. It was like the riots were done, except that there were people standing in front of their stores. And, you know, I don't have any video, but I'll show you. I do have some pictures, so I'll show them in this video. But there were people standing in front of their stores, protecting their stores. I remember there was a guy who owned a bike store. All of his bikes got stolen. I mean, it was really bad. And I found out that these riots were against personal wealth, you know. But also I had heard that a young black man had been shot by London police the night before, which was really unusual because London cops don't generally carry guns. So there was something going on, and, you know, everybody I spoke to had a different story, so I didn't really, truly know what was going on. But I think it was mainly like this, you know, protest against personal wealth, like the 1%, you know, kind of like there was something similar going on in the United States at this time too, because I think this was like 2011, I believe, 2011 when I was there, something like that. So anyway, I walked through Camden. It's like nothing had ever happened. There are like markets on the street. There's people milling about. There's people in restaurants. It's like the riots took the day off, you know. So I got down, I went to the space. It was beautiful. I stayed there all day. I got to work in the space a little bit and do a little rehearsing. And I go home, have a beautiful day. I go out for a run in Regent's Park. It was really, really beautiful. And so then it started to get dark, and the riots started again. And so anyway, the artistic director of the theater told me that all the shows were canceled for the first 3 nights. And it was because there was a curfew in most of London when this was happening. So I was like, can I go to space? Like, can I work at least? Like, I'm only gonna be here for I think I had 10 performances. And I'm like, I'm here from the other side of the world. Like, can I at least go rehearse? She said, sure. Somebody will be there, they'll give you the keys, but just lock up when you leave, you know, and just be careful, please. So I was like, okay. So I made my way to the theater. The riots weren't as bad, you know, it was only like 7 o'clock at night at that point. So I make my way through the streets. I get there. There was a gentleman there who handed me the keys and told me to be careful, showed me how the lighting board worked and all that stuff. And so I started, you know, to get ready to rehearse. I kind of set myself up. I was in there all by myself. But I guess I forgot to lock the door behind me when that guy left, or I don't know, maybe he forgot to lock the door or whatever. But just as I'm about to start rehearsing like a full run through of the show, somebody bursts into the theater, and it's this, you know, kind of middle-aged man, or, you know, maybe younger, you know, maybe 35, 38-ish, something like that. And he says to me, please do the show. I need to see it, please. I bought tickets for tonight. I need to see it. Like, please just perform it for me. And I'm like, yo, there's a curfew. What are you doing here? And we're closed. I mean, the show is not happening tonight. He's like, please, you know, I just moved here. You know, I'm from Japan. I got a new job. My family's not with me. I didn't know about the curfew. I made my way across town. Can I watch you rehearse? Like, can you just do it, please? Like, I need it. Like, I'm totally freaked out. And so I'm like, you know what? Yeah, that'd be awesome, you know? And because I had developed it in the streets and stuff like that, I was used to performing for very few people, you know? So I said, but I'm not gonna make believe that you're some big audience and we're in here with a full house. No, I'm just gonna do it for you. So I would appreciate it if you just sat right here, right at the front of the stage, right at the foot of the stage. and I'm gonna share the story with you, but I'm gonna do it just as if I would do it on opening night. I'm gonna give you everything. I'm just gonna do what I do, because that's how I rehearse anyway. Like, I don't believe in going half speed for anything ever. I go full speed all the time. You know, it's like game speed. The way I rehearse is the way I'm gonna perform. That's what I've always believed, you know, like no halfway, no playing around, you know, like do it for real every single time to prepare my mind, my body, and my spirit for performance. So I start the show and I give this guy everything. Like I laid it all out there. I opened myself up. I just ripped my heart open for this guy and put on a great performance, and he was the greatest audience in the history of the world. Like, he was amazing. You know, he was laughing and he was crying and he was screaming and he was stomping his feet and he was screaming, yeah, no, and you know, he was just amazing. Like, just his energy was just so, it was like good nutrition, you know, it was like filling me up, and I was playing off of it, and we just had a great experience together. Like, as I always say, we had a beautiful shared experience. It was amazing. And, you know, afterwards we talked for a while. We did a Q&A, and he asked me a million questions, you know, and it was like a really amazing exchange, you know. And it turned out that he had just moved to London, like I said. He just got a job there, and his family was going to come follow him in a couple of weeks. He just got married like 6 weeks before that. His mother was also coming to live with him, and it was just like the greatest, like, you know, I mean, I've performed for big houses, and of course, like every performer, sometimes when you're coming up, you perform for almost nobody, you know? But the thing for me is I always approach every performance, no matter what I'm doing, in the same way. It doesn't matter where I am, how many people are there, you know, it doesn't matter. I am going to approach it as if I am in a Broadway house, opening night, the most important show of my life, the last time I'm ever going to get to perform. I might die tomorrow. Like, I am leaving my organs out on the stage for everybody. I'm ripping my chest open and letting everybody know who I am. I am completely naked. I am giving it up every single time. And, you know, I learned to do that, whether it's one person or 1,500 people or 3,000 or whatever. It doesn't make a difference. You know, I'm going to be the same. If you're going to see me perform, you're going to see the same show no matter what the environment is. I mean, obviously, the energy might feel different, you know, in a big crowd. There's nothing like a big crowd, but there's also nothing like that intimacy of this one-to-one. And some people find it more difficult, actually, to perform for one person or just a few people, you know, because you can feel the energy on a much more personal level, on a much more intimate level. I keep using the same word, but that is what it is. You know, it's like you can really feel that energy. You know, one other thing that happened when I was there is one night, you know, my show was about my adoption and my very ambivalent search for my biological mother at that time. And one night, a foster care agency, I gave a bunch of tickets away to an agency that took care of a bunch of foster kids. So they filled the house with kids who were either living in or aging out of foster care. And I'll never forget. And I'll end the story with this, because this is the kind of thing that makes you realize how important it is to take every single opportunity that you have to share your story very seriously, because you never know who's in that audience, what people are going through, what they need, and what you might get from the experience. And I'll never forget that I had this house of these kids, you know, probably from age 14 to 28. And there was a young girl sitting right in front of me, like right at the foot of the stage where that guy had been sitting. And she was probably 17 or 18 years old. But this was one of the nights where the theater was back open, and this was a regular performance. And so it was a full house, and, you know, full lights and sound and everything. I had my set, you know, very minimal set, because I was in London. I didn't take anything with me, but I used what they had. And lights went up, and the show used to begin where I'd be standing on a scaffold, and I'd start with my arm lifted in the air like that. And the minute the lights came up, I heard this sound, and I looked in front of me, and this young girl was weeping. She was sobbing, like she was snot coming out of her face, crying. She was inconsolable, uncontrollable crying. And I just thought, wow, it's just the anticipation alone of what she's about to experience is affecting her in this way. And so I took that as such an honor and such a privilege to now be able to help her to, like, I don't know, I don't want to sound pompous, but I do believe that art does heal. It's a healing process. It's a nurturing process. And that's what I love about theater. We take things that are difficult and hard to deal with, and, things that we sometimes can't work through in our regular lives, and we can turn it into like beautiful flowers and beautiful stories and beautiful characters, and we turn it into things that we can actually just, enjoy and relax and share with other people in a performance space. And so, I really, even though I couldn't really see her because the lights, it's hard for me to see people in the audience, even though I'm always trying to, because I love to look into people's eyes when I perform. And I really paid a lot of attention to this young girl, the whole performance. And, it was really, really beautiful because she obviously calmed down after a while, and we spoke afterwards. We did a Q&A. She didn't say a word at the Q&A, but she did come up to me and speak afterwards. And she told me some of her story and her life, and she had been through a lot, and she had been through, living with multiple families and never quite fitting in with anybody, and eventually aging out of foster care, but never having had a meaningful familial, like a family relationship. And it was very painful for her. But what was amazing was she was surrounded by these other kids who clearly loved her to death. Like, they just loved this young girl. And they were so supportive, and they were really taking care of her because they saw that she was having a hard time. And I said to her, it seems like your family's right here. And she broke down again, and she gave me a huge hug. And the woman who was hosting all of them was really pretty amazing. And so, anyway, it's one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in the theater, or in any kind of performance or any artistic or creative sharing of my work. That time in London was something I will never forget. There were nights where, the first 3 nights when my shows were canceled, I performed out in Regent's Park just rehearsing, and I actually had these huge crowds of people in the park who came to see the show, and almost every one of those people who saw me in the park wound up coming to the show over the next 10 days, which was pretty amazing. They saw me, and then they bought tickets to come see me again. And what's equally as amazing is 2 years later, I opened that show. I opened Broke Wide Open off Broadway, 45th Street Theater, right down the street from where Kinky Boots was playing on 45th between 7th and 8th. And opening night was a night where I gave most of the proceeds of the tickets to the Children's Aid Society for Adoption and Foster Care. And so it was a big deal. We had a big dinner afterwards, and it was like a really important night for me. Obviously I was opening off Broadway. It was the end of a 6 years of hard work. Opening night, and full house, sold tickets for quite a bit of money because I was trying to raise money for something, and it included this dinner. And thank you to Carmine's for providing all the food for free. My childhood friend Glenn Rolnick, who was one of the, I think he was like a head chef at Carmine's at the time, provided all the food for me, which is pretty amazing. Believe it or not, a bunch of those people who saw me in London in 2011 showed up for opening night for Broke Wide Open in New York City at the 45th Street Theater, because they continued to follow me on social media. They were on my mailing list. I mean, there were a plethora of ways that they would have heard about opening night, but they showed up that night, which was crazy, and just obviously gave me everything, just filled me up. And that's the kind of stuff that just keeps me going, and I crave those experiences all the time. And I really, because of the pandemic, I haven't been on stage now for 2 years. I made a movie, and I've been working on doing filmmaking work, but I haven't done live theater in a while, and I'm feeling myself getting really, really itchy to get on stage, and it's going to happen very soon. But I wanted to share that story tonight. And so that's my episode of Stories in 4K this week. I believe this is episode 13, and we're getting to the end of the summer where this series is going to end, but I'm having such a good time sharing these stories. So anyway, this was kind of spontaneous. I'm shooting at 18 millimeters because I wanted to give you an idea of where I was. I'm in my apartment. I wanted you to see what's around here. So I'm shooting at 18 millimeters. I'm using my Tamron 17-70 zoom lens, which you know, I am the prime person. I usually use prime lenses, but I'm really loving this lens. It's got a very special kind of look to it. You know, I think it almost looks like a vintage lens, and I have some vintage lenses, and there's something about this lens that I really love, the colors that come off of it. And so I'm shooting with that, and obviously using my Sony a6400. And thank you so much for watching and coming to share all these stories with me. And please subscribe if you would, and please hit the like button if you like these stories. And I will see you on the next one. And that's it. Stay well. Until next time, peace.